and welcome to another episode of PDA Dads UK. Before we get on, I want you to just go now, hit like, hit subscribe and ring the bell so that you know when I've got new content coming up. Loads of interesting stuff coming up and some interviews as well, so they're really worth tuning into. Welcome back, and this week I want to talk about something that I had the privilege this weekend of being asked to speak at the PDA Space Summit, and it was fantastic. And if you're interested in any of the talks that are on there, I'll put a link in the description. You'll be able to go and check out all the different talks that are on there via the back pocket pass. So that will be in the description. One of the talks there was on the Polyvagal System, and I'd never heard of this. So this was like something that was really, what's this about? And I've learned an incredible amount, and it's something that's really piqued my interest, and I think will be really helpful understanding from any parent's perspective in general, any person's perspective. But I think especially with any people who have autistic kids, any people that have any kind of neurodiverse kids, or maybe neurodiverse themselves, then it's something that's really, really interesting. So what is the polyvagal system? I'll start with basically a situation, a bit of a role play if you like. But have you ever been in that situation where you just feel something's not right? It's like a sixth sense, if you like. You just got this awareness that something's not the way it should be. It may be right, it may be wrong, but it's just that like the hairs on your back of your neck start to stand on end, or you just feel something's off. You may look around and everybody else seems okay, but you've just got this sense of something, and you may get it with a person, you may get it in a situation, just where you feel this isn't right. It's almost like a danger sense. The feeling that someone's watching you, the feeling that something's just off. That's actually the polyvagal system in action. And it's triggered by, we are triggered by cues all the time, and inputs that our brain processes and our nervous system processes. But we don't realize it goes on a completely subconscious level. And it's our mind reading these cues that works with the polyvagal system. So it's actually how we perceive the world around us and our sense of safety or danger within that world around us. So when I say we're reading the world around us, it can be lots of different types of cues. We read people's body language. We don't realize it. We're not processing it consciously, but we're reading it, and we're sensing the world around us. People's tones, even their smells and scents and stuff like that come across that we can interpret. A really interesting story was where Debbie Harry, the musician, singer for Blondie, believes that she was actually at one point abducted by Ted Bundy and got away. Now there's question marks as to whether it actually was Ted Bundy, but one of the things that she says is that when she was in the car with him, there was a smell and she was overwhelmed by it, and it was every part of her was responding to the odor that was coming out, and apparently that's not uncommon. Something about people with ill intent, they love certain, I don't know, pheromones or something about the sense they give off, and we're able to pick up on that. And that was what happened to her in that situation, and she was able to get herself out of the car and get away. So that was the polyvagal system in process there, sensing danger through something that was, separate from our normal awareness. Just an overwhelming sense that she was in danger, she was in trouble, and she got out of that situation. So all this comes back to our nervous system. And we've talked in previous episodes about sensory processing disorder and how it relates to our nervous system. So I'm going to go into a bit of detail about how our nervous system works. And basically there's two parts to it. And the first part of this is our central nervous system. So the central nervous system is combined of two parts, and it's our brain and it's actually our spinal cord, and they interact together. The second part is our peripheral nervous system, and this really certainly comes into play with with sensory processing disorder. But that's all of the other nerve endings in our muscular system and everything that surrounds our brain and our spinal cord and how they interact with each other. And again, you can split the peripheral nervous system into two parts. And the first part is our somatic nervous system. And this is our voluntary part of our nervous system. So the best way to explain this is if I want to move my arm, my brain communicates to my muscles through my nerves that I need to move my arm. It's a conscious decision. It can take place unconsciously, we may have a reflex or something like that, but that comes into the other part really. But this is about our conscious decisions. If I'm going to pick up a cup and have a drink, my brain is telling my arm, you need to move, pick that up, bring it to you, have a drink. It happens on a voluntary basis. It's controlled by us. The second part is the autonomic part of our peripheral nervous system. And that is the involuntary part. Now that's where our reflexes kick in. That's where our just everyday things that we just do naturally kick in. A great example is your breathing. You don't have to think about breathing. Your body's taking care of it automatically. You're breathing in, you're breathing out. And that is what this is. That's the involuntary part. You can control it. You can actually click it in to be something that's voluntary. I can choose to hold my breath and I can choose to release it. I can choose to take a deep breath. I can choose to, I can control that. But my general breathing, I go about my everyday, I'm not even thinking about it. I'll know when I'm suddenly not able to breathe. But the autonomic nervous system is taking care of that. It's happening on a completely involuntary level, and it's just taking care of itself. Now, when we're looking at our autonomic nervous system, again, it can be split into two sort of functions and two different areas that are important within it. So we have the sympathetic nervous system. And this is the part that is to do with, really it feeds back to the fight, flight or freeze mechanism that we have. So we talked in previous episodes about the three parts to the brain, your Spock, your Kirk and your lizard. And there'll be a link in here, go check it out. But basically it's that Spock is logic, Kirk is your emotions, and lizard is your basic instincts, your basic functions. And these three functions work together essentially, or they should be working together. And they perceive the danger around us. So I'm Australian, and in Australia there are a lot of very deadly animals that want to hurt you. And I've been hospitalised having been bitten by a redback spider at one point. My danger awareness of spiders is really acute. And when I see a spider, I'm instantly, even in the UK where no spider's really going to hurt you that badly, but my sense of danger around spiders is heightened by the fact that I've had this experience. It's fed into this sympathetic nervous system. When I see it, I'm immediately aware, and I'm very wary of spiders. The same can happen with, snakes. It can happen with, it can even happen with a cat. If you've got a cat around that you're not familiar with, or a dog that you're not familiar with, you may take a step. Are they going to be safe? I'm always teaching my kids to, you never just go up and pat a dog or pat a cat. If your dog's got an owner, you ask the owner first, because you want to make sure that the dog's safe to approach and you're not going to get bitten or hurt by the dog. This is that same thing in play. There's a danger perception, and our body, our nervous system, our sympathetic nervous system responds to it. Now, the other side of that coin, if you like, is the parasympathetic nervous system. So these two, obviously sort of two sides of the same coin, if you like. And with the parasympathetic nervous system, it's basically becoming aware that the danger period or the risk has dropped, and we're able to rest and recuperate and reflect. And that's basically, our heart rate will calm, the adrenaline will drop. All of the things that have been kicked in by the sympathetic nervous system are then brought into a bringing down period. It's almost like the warm down after exercise. You're adjusting your body from the period of having been at the gym and doing the heavy weights. Once you come off them, you warm down so that your body is bringing itself down. This is an automatic response that your body is taking care of for that. So moving on, I want to talk about one specific nerve in our body. And this nerve was basically the whole idea of polyvagal theory, which is really what we're looking at. So this is theory, but I think it's established enough that there's a lot of basis for it. There was a guy by the name of Dr. Stephen Porges, and he basically developed polyvagal theory. And he's responsible for a lot of the thoughts and a lot of the information that's gone into this and understanding this. And he was very, very focused on what's called the vagus nerve. Now that's VAGUS. So it's got nothing to do with stupid gambling debts and strippers in the US. It's got nothing to do with that. You don't have to worry about Penn and Teller popping up. The vagus nerve is part of, obviously, our nervous system. Now, the vagus nerve essentially connects part of our brain. The technical term is the medulla oblongata. And I don't know about you, but I always think of the Water Boy with Adam Sandler, because he becomes obsessed with that phrase. It's the only place I'd heard it before. The medulla oblongata. The vagus nerve is basically what connects the medulla oblongata, that part of our brain. It's in the lower part of our brain, and it connects it to our spinal cord. And there are two sides, again, to the vagus nerve. So there's the dorsal, which is the back of the nerve, and the ventral, which is the front. Now, these are all technical terms. I'm using them, and it's just to explain that these are part of the system, and they help to understand it on a deeper level. But yeah, there's two parts to the vagus nerve. So there's the front and there's the back. That's really essentially what you need to know. And basically, the vagus nerve connects with all the other nerves in our body, and it runs throughout the body. So it connects to the spinal cord, and it's sort of a network that pans out through the rest of our body. So this basically all connects into what we were talking about at the beginning, that sense of danger. And it's something we do from birth. So if you think about it, when your baby's newborn, they feel safe with you, hopefully. But your baby feels safe with you. They've learnt the cues. They know that mum or dad represents safety and protection, and there's a closeness to them. But when they meet someone new, when someone different comes to them, they may start crying. And that's really what we're talking about here. It's that immense sense of danger or awareness. It's not that there's necessarily a danger. It's that there's a potential for it. And, babies don't have the logic system processing yet. Almost everything's happening on that involuntary level. And so when they're presented with a situation where there's a potential danger, it puts them at risk, they respond. And that's why you may get that some people, they just don't like. There may be a smell about them. There may be just something in the facial expressions they're reading. It could, there's so many different things that can process this, but it can just be a response that this is, stranger danger, if you like, innate from birth. Our bodies are constantly scanning our environment and assessing our risks, assessing our dangers. And that scanning for danger constantly, it's always taking place, and it's taking place without our knowledge. It's taking place on a subconscious level. It is part of the involuntary part of our nervous system, if you like. So it's something that we're doing whether we like it or not. And it's necessary. It's what prevents us from hurting ourselves. We're constantly scanning our environment for things that are about. And if you think about it, you might walk through your living room and the kids have left toys lying around. You'll very often just sidestep them, step around them. You're not even thinking about it. There's just an innate awareness that that's there, and you could trip over it, you walk around it, or you step down if you're particularly mindful, and you pick it up and put it away, or tell the kids to come pick it up and put it away, however you particularly respond to that situation. But that's part of that danger sensing around us. Driving, it becomes an innate part of driving. You're constantly aware of what's going on around you, and it takes part on a subconscious level. You're aware that somebody might be changing lanes. You're aware that someone ahead of you is braking. You're not really thinking about it. The light comes on in your brain, automatically processes that the brake lights are on, so you need to brake as well. It's all part of this system that's taking place all the time, revolving around us, scanning our environment and making sure that we're safe within our environment. And if it presents a situation where we are in potential danger, so like I say, if I see a spider, I'm like, wait, and I respond to that, and it's an involuntary response, and then I can bring in the voluntary response of what am I going to do about this situation. So bringing that back to this vagus nerve that we've discussed, basically those two parts, the back and the front of the vagus nerve, are constantly working together. One is sensing the safety and knowing that when we're in a safe situation, and that's actually the front. And the back is constantly assessing the danger around us. It's all really interesting. There's so much more reading you can do about it. But basically, what I want to get to is that we have this system in place where we sense danger around us. We also sense safety around us. Those two work together to ensure that we are in a good place mentally and physically. So we know when we're in a safe place and we respond. So a baby, when it's being cuddled by its mother or father, knows it's safe, calms. Everything is in a safety mode. It doesn't need to respond. when there is danger present, when there's a stranger, or if I see a spider, then it's the back of that, the vagus nerve, that's responding, and that's alerting us to a present danger, and we are then able to respond either subconsciously or fully consciously about our environment. It's either automatic or it's considered. So bringing this back to Porges, Dr. Porges, who's theorized all this and come up with it, he's actually proposed that there's like a hierarchy, if you like, to these systems, and they work in different ways. So the oldest, it's sort of talked about in an evolutionary sense, but basically what he considers the oldest is immobilization. And that's so, really, if you think about it, it comes back to a fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. So it's the back of the brain, it's the lizard, if you're using the Star Trek analogy that we've used in other episodes. And it's our fight, flight, or freeze. It's whether we're going to get aggressive, we're either going to run away because there's danger present, or there's freeze. There's the whole thing of, whoa. And it's almost like that your body's allowing that time to engage your logic so that you can then process and work out what you're going to do. A deer in the headlights is a perfect example of freeze. It's just like, and that's how it responds. They say that's the best way to respond to, I think it's bears, is it? I'm not sure, I can't remember now, but certain animals, the best thing you can do is just freeze, because they sense movement, and when you freeze, it can't see you, essentially, you're just part of the backdrop. So obviously the opposite of this one is your flight, mobilization. That's when you're going to run away. That's when you're going to take action. Really, it sort of plays into both the fight and flight part of it. You're either going to respond by running away, or you're going to respond by, if it was a spider and it was on my wall and I've got to get out, I'm going to find a way to go and get some bug spray and get rid of the spider. That's just how I react, because they've hurt me before and they'll damn well do it again. So I'm not about to let them. I hate spiders. And so the third part, which has been proposed, is essentially, it's our socialization. And this comes back to, again, that baby feeling safe. It's the knowledge of safety around you, and it's knowing that the people and your surroundings are safe. So being able to interact with people safely. Now, there may be people that I sense I can't trust, and I'm not going to talk to them about certain things. There are people I would trust implicitly, whether it's been from learned experience that I know I can trust them, I've shared things in the past, or simply just, and like I say, almost like that sort of sixth sense. I mean, we talked about the fact that there are actually 8 senses, and there's the vestibular system that all comes into the sensory processing disorder. But basically, it's another key part of our protection around us. There's the sort of physical side of it, their environment, the presence of dangers and things like that. But there's a social aspect to it. So it's actually sensing and interpreting body language, tones, facial expressions, these parts of people that we then get an innate sense of whether we can trust, whether we're safe, or whether they're going to propose a threat to us. And that threat can take many different forms. It could just be a sense of distrust, discomfort. It could be that there's a physical threat. It could be that, I'm a bit of a teddy bear, everyone tells me, but I don't look it. I think part of that was I was bullied a lot as a kid, and so naturally I just present myself in a fairly, people don't mess with me because of the way I look. But realistically, I'm just a calm person. I'm fairly rational, and I enjoy being around people, and that translates. There's something in that translates and people respond to. And it's the same. We are picking that up in other people. And that's what the social aspect of this whole thing is. So why is all this important? And particularly, this is obviously a channel focused on neurodiversity, autism, pathological demand avoidance, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, all these different things that come into different forms of neurodiversity. Why is the polyvagal system so important to it? There are ways that our polyvagal system can be tuned or trained, if you like, and that's by experience. So coming back to the whole spider thing, I never used to be very worried about spiders. Even living in Australia, it was like healthy awareness, because there are some very deadly spiders in Australia, but it was always something it wasn't almost an irrational fear that I have. However, once I'd been bitten and hospitalized, having been bitten by a spider, my response is very different now. It's been trained by trauma, if you like. So I had a situation where I was bitten by a spider. I wound up in hospital and I was very ill. Because I was bitten by a spider, because it made me ill, because I was hospitalized for 3 days after a redback bit me in my sleep, it had a tremendous effect. And so I'm now much more aware of the danger that a spider can present. My polyvagal system is responding to the input of trauma that I've had. It's learned from it and it presents a new threat from an experience I've had. This can come into play very much with kids, and it can be just that feeling of discomfort and stuff that comes across. And when we take into account things like sensory processing disorder, when we take into account autism, when we take into account neurodiversity, it's the brain reacting a different way to things. A sensory processing disorder is something we talked about in a number of episodes. There's a playlist I've got of the episodes I've done on sensory processing disorder. Link will be in the description. And we discussed in that the way the brain processes certain responses is what different. So some people with sensory processing disorder won't feel pain the same way. The input may be overwhelming and it may be underwhelming. So they might actually be really physically hurt but not feel a lot of pain. And that can be a real danger in itself. When we bring into account the polyvagal system, and it's this sense of danger, if it's being misinterpreted, it can then lead into these meltdowns and behaviours that we find to be challenging, if you like. And that's the key. They're challenging to us, but they're a normal reaction for the person experiencing it, because their polyvagal system is informing their brain there's a potential danger here that's hitting straight into the fight, flight or freeze. And when you combine that with this whole different aspects of the brain and the way that it works, particularly with autism, it comes back to this underlying anxiety. And we talked about this anxiety in a lot of episodes. It was the first episode I ever did was on the link between autism and anxiety. And going back to the Star Trek analogy, you've got Spock, you've got Kirk, and you've got the lizard. When a child goes into, or when a person in general goes into the red, they're not thinking rationally or clearly. Spock goes for a walk and all you're left with is your emotional response and your fight, flight or freeze. That's all that's left is Kirk and the lizard. And that's why you get these overreactions. When you've got this underlying anxiety that is always there, when there's then a sense of danger presented, it can create an overreaction. Well, to what for us is an overreaction. But for the person experiencing it, it's perfectly rational to them. There's a fear and they're going to react to it. It's just this flight, fight or freeze. And they're going to, go into exactly that. They're either going to stop, they're going to fight, or they're going to just freeze in their headlights. You basically got running away, meltdown or shutdown. They're the three options that you're going to face. The polyvagal system really plays into that. And when you've got a mind that operates in a different fashion to neurotypical brains, that's where you get these different reactions. Understanding this can be a huge step forward. If we understand that this system is there and there may be, so these things that seem irrational fears, and irrational fears are something that are often looked at in autism. So when diagnoses take place, one of the questions on all the questionnaires I've had to complete for my daughter, they ask about, are there any irrational fears? These irrational fears are there because of this polyvagal system, because it's almost being overinterpreted. It's part of, to me, it's part of the sensory processing disorder side of my daughter, that when there's a danger, there's an overreaction. My daughter, like me, hates spiders, and there will be a huge overreaction on that. I have a friend also whose son had a complete meltdown on the weekend because there was a caterpillar in the kitchen. Now, to me, it's a caterpillar. To most people, it's a caterpillar, but to him, it was a real threat. It really heightened his anxiety, and it led to an almost instant meltdown. That's what we have to process. So it comes back to this understanding of anxiety, the fact that it's constantly underlying in the surface, and we talked about the traffic light system before. Myself, I live in the green most of the time. Calm, rational, okay. Something may happen to stress me, I click into the orange. When I'm in the orange, I'm stressed. I'm having to think things through, but logic's still engaged. When we hit into the red, that's when we act irrationally. We may lash out, we may swear, carry on, shout, scream, whatever the reaction is that's there. That's what occurs. For people like my daughter, with this constant underlying anxiety, it appears she's fine because she's in the orange. She's actually still engaging logic into her process and how this is going. Spock is still in the picture. When she clicks into red, he's gone. And it only takes the smallest thing to click into the red because she's living in the orange. Green is just never in the picture. It's a 2-light system for my daughter. It's orange, orange, red. And it takes nothing at all to click into the red. When we understand the polyvagal system, when we understand that we have this perception of danger around us and threat, the first thing we do when we're in danger and threat, our anxiety increases. Our body releases adrenaline. It releases hormones into our bloodstream that allow us to respond quickly. We will act in, and this comes back to the unplanned or the uncontrolled aspects of the polyvagal system. I may choose to go and get something and spray a spider, but if I jump back, that's an instant reaction. It's a reflex. And we get this reflex action. My friend's son going into meltdown over a caterpillar was due to the fact that that's the reaction. That is the reflex that has come from being presented with what he saw as a threat, what he saw as something that was uncomfortable or dangerous to him. That's the polyvagal system in process, and it's this awareness of the world around us. And if our anxieties are heightened to that constantly, it's going to contribute to that inner anxiety. This is all new to me, and it's something that I've been learning more about only over the last week or so, even the last few days. But it's really fascinated me and really helped me in understanding part of what my daughter goes through. When she has what I consider to be an overreaction, I'm like, well, it might be something that's touching her or something like that, but her reaction is just, whoa, and she lash out and can be aggressive. It's part of PDA tends to be a very aggressive reaction. But because this understanding that this polyvagal system there, she's got a heightened sense and awareness of her danger around her, and her feeling of calm inside that is a much smaller feeling of calm. So bringing it back to the baby, her feeling of actually being held and calm and safe is reduced because she's basically, from what I can see, the sensory processing disorder that she has overplays the danger aspect of this whole thing. So she's constantly more aware of the threats to her. Now the irony is, in many situations, it doesn't work in the same way. She has a far reduced sense of danger in many things. She'll quite happily hang out of a window, and she will engage in behaviours that could be dangerous to herself. And it all plays back into this polyvagal system. It's in some ways the worst of both worlds for her, because she's oversensitive to so many things that are around her and the threats that they can pose. But they're the things that are often not a threat, but she perceives it that way. Other things that are actually physically dangerous for her, her brain just doesn't process it in the same way. She doesn't understand the danger, and so she reacts in ways that are potentially harmful to herself. It's a fascinating area, and it's worth looking at. Really, it's really helping me at the moment to understand what my daughter experiences day to day. And being aware that she feels these threats, putting her in situations that are more comfortable, are really good. My daughter loves to be enveloped. Now, we talked about on a recent episode schemas and the enveloping schema. She likes to feel enclosed. She doesn't like tents and stuff like that. So she will make dens. She loves dens. But really what she'll do is she'll bring down her duvet and she'll curl up in it. She likes to feel that protective safeness. And it's been one of those things that's a bugbear for me. It's like, the bedding's all down here. You need to get your bed up to your bedroom and make your bed. What I come to understand is, I'm going to start accepting that as something that is just her. She needs that because her sense of safeness within her polyvagal system is enhanced by the fact that she's wrapped up. I can see that. And it never really occurred to me in the same way. I understood it from a certain perspective. But seeing it that it's actually something that's an innate part of her being, and this helps her to reduce her anxiety, it suddenly makes so much more sense to me. I'm going to be looking a lot more at this. I'm going to be doing a lot more research, so there'll probably be more episodes to come on this. But that's all I really wanted to say for now, is introduce you to this idea, introduce you to this theory, and encourage you, look at your kids. If you're struggling with irrational fears and behaviours that challenge as a result of those irrational fears, understanding the root cause can help with dealing with the situation and putting our kids in a more comfortable situation. So if it's wrapping up in a duvet because that's how my daughter feels safe, then that's what I'm going to do. That's what she needs. And that's something magic that's happened for me this week. And it's a really positive outcome from understanding this. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say. As I say, there'll be more episodes coming on this, no doubt, as I research and look at it more. Please do like this episode. Please do subscribe and do hit that bell that shows you when you've got new content coming up. Stay safe, everyone, and I'll see you again on the next episode.